Welcome to the deep dive. This is where we really try to get into the core of interesting ideas, looking directly at the sources you might be curious about.
Yeah, the aim is simple, really. We want to pull out those key insights for you.
Exactly, those aha moments that can kind of shift your perspective, but, without making it feel like homework, getting right to
Sure.
the heart of it.
hmm And today, we've got a really interesting mix. We're looking at how people think about money, building wealth, and what financial freedom actually looks like.
Yeah, we're starting with a big one. Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad, Poor Dad came out back in '97. Feels like it's almost part of the financial conversation now.
It really does.
It's written, well, almost like parables, right? Based on his experience with his own dad, the poor dad, who had that traditional view, job security, academics.
Right.
And then his friend's dad, the rich dad, who was an entrepreneur with a totally different focus on assets, financial smarts.
A very different approach. And alongside that, we've got something more recent. Steven Farrugia's value triangles concept, which he laid out on LinkedIn.
Okay.
It's this framework that sort of maps out a journey, maybe, from just earning to, well, real financial independence.
Interesting. So how do these two connect? It feels like the value triangles could give us a modern way to look at Kiyosaki's ideas.
I think so. Ferrucci talks about these stages: service value, investment value, and then this thing called the tribal elder path.
Yeah.
It gives us a structure to think about the rich dad principles. It's about seeing financial literacy not just as survival, but as a path to having more choice, maybe even contributing more.
Okay, let's start there then. The core of Rich Dad, Poor Dad is that massive difference between the two dads, right?
Absolutely.
Poor dad. Study hard, get a good job, live within your means. The advice most of us probably heard.
The standard playbook.
But then Rich Dad is all about building assets, investing wisely, getting financially educated in a very practical way. It's quite a contrast. Makes you question things.
It really does. And what's key is that the rich dad's way wasn't about luck or, getting rich quick. It was about understanding how money works, how it flows.
And learning to direct it.
Exactly. He gave Kiyosaki and his friend these, well, pretty practical, sometimes unconventional lessons of financial education most people just don't get.
And a huge piece of that was telling assets from liabilities. Rich Dad really hammered that home.
Oh, yeah. Foundation.
An asset basically puts money in your pocket, income, appreciation, whatever.
Right. Think rental property income, dividends from stocks.
Whereas a liability just takes money out.
Yeah.
Debt payments, expenses that don't earn you anything. It sounds almost too simple.
It does sound simple, but actually living by that distinction, that's the game changer. It reframes how you look at everything you buy or spend money on. Like you said, every dollar spent on a liability is kind of working against you.
While a dollar in an asset is out there working for you, even when you're sleeping, theoretically.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And that connects straight into Farrugia's framework, specifically the investment value triangle.
Okay, how so?
Well, the whole point of investing, whether it's businesses, stocks, real estate, whatever, is to acquire assets, things that generate income like dividends or rent, or grow in value over time, capital gains.
So it mirrors the rich dad's advice. Focus on building those income-producing things, not just chasing a bigger paycheck.
Exactly. It's about making your money work, not just you working for money.
And Rich Dad, Poor Dad also brings in the cash flow quadrant idea. Employee, self-employed, business owner, investor, ESBI.
Right. And the book definitely leans towards the B&I quadrants, business owner and investor, as the main paths to serious wealth building.
Why is that, according to the book?
Well, that quadrant idea really highlights the shift.
Yeah.
Moving away from directly trading your time for money, that's the E, and often the S quadrant.
Which links back to Farrugia's starting point, the service value triangle, right?
Yeah.
Creating skills for income.
Exactly. The shift is towards the B&I quadrants, where you're building systems or using capital that generates income more passively. It's about leverage.
Leveraging other people's time in a business, or leveraging your money as an investor.
That's the core idea.
And something both sources seem to hit hard is mindset. Rich Dad, Poor Dad really pushes you to look at your own beliefs about money. Are they holding you back?
Oh, massively.
Yeah.
Kiyosaki argues you need to cultivate a positive, maybe an empowered relationship with wealth.
Yeah.
Not see it as something bad or, out of reach.
Get rid of those limiting beliefs.
Yeah. And that resonates with Farrugia's idea of escaping money slavery. If your whole life is just working to pay the bills.
You're trapped in a cycle.
Right. Both of them argue that Changing how you think about money, about your own potential, is like step zero. It has to happen first.
Okay, so practically, how does Ferrugia map out the escape route? You mentioned the service value triangle first.
Yeah, that's the start for most people. You build skills people need, you offer them, you get paid for your time and expertise. That's how you generate income initially.
Makes sense. Standard path.
Then comes the crucial part. What do you do with the surplus? The money left over after your essential costs are covered.
Right.
That surplus is the fuel for the next stage, the investment value triangle. You take that extra cash and put it to work in investments.
Okay, and the goal isn't just to keep up with inflation, is it?
No, definitely not. I mean, inflation eats away at your money's value, maybe around 5% a year, historically speaking.
Yeah.
You need returns above that to actually grow wealth. Farrugia throws out numbers like aiming for 10, 30% or more.
Wow, that sounds ambitious.
It is ambitious, and it definitely implies taking on some risk. Higher potential returns usually mean higher risk, so doing your homework is absolutely essential. It's not guaranteed.
Sure, sure. But the aim of getting those kinds of returns through investing.
The aim, as both Kiyosaki and Farrugia see it, is to get to a point where the income from your investments covers your basic cost of living.
Ah, the crossover point.
Exactly. That's the pivotal moment. That's when you've achieved a real measure of financial freedom. You can choose how you spend your time, whether you work, what you work on, because your assets are paying the bills.
You've decoupled time from income, like you said earlier.
Huge autonomy gain. But Farrugia adds a really important warning here about that surplus, a potential trap.
Okay, what's the trap?
Well, it's really tempting once you have extra money coming in, maybe from investments or a higher salary, to just buy more stuff.
Lifestyle inflation.
Exactly. Bigger house, nicer car, more gadgets. And look, enjoying your money isn't bad, but he warns that this can easily ramp up your cost of living.
Ah, so you end up needing even more income just to maintain all the new stuff.
Right. You could end up in a different kind of trap, a sort of servitude to your possessions and the income needed to support them.
So what's the alternative then?
His point is about consciously figuring out what is enough for you. True freedom, in his view, isn't about having absolutely everything. It's about knowing what actually brings you contentment and aligning your finances with that, instead of just chasing more and more.
Finding contentment. That's interesting. It leads into his final stage, doesn't it? The tribal elder path.
It does. And this isn't about like becoming a hermit or hoarding wealth. It's the opposite.
Okay.
It's about using your resources, your freedom, your wisdom, maybe, to invest back into others, to build shared resources, to help lift the community around you.
So moving beyond just personal accumulation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Think about it. Maybe you mentor someone starting out, share financial knowledge, invest in local businesses or community projects. It's about using your surplus time, money, knowledge to help the tribe, however you define that, thrive.
It's a very different end goal than just having a massive portfolio. It's about contribution.
Exactly. The idea is that the tribal elder uses their freedom to empower others to find their freedom. It's about creating a positive cycle, teaching others how to manage surpluses, invest wisely, and eventually give back themselves.
That's a powerful concept. No, we should probably circle back to Rich Dad, Poor Dad for a second. Obviously, hugely successful book, millions sold, translations, bestseller lists for years.
Undeniably influential. Endorsements from big names, too.
But it's also had its fair share of criticism, hasn't it? I remember talking to someone who just found the whole asset liability thing way too simplistic, almost naive.
It definitely has faced pushback. Some critics point to things they see as factual errors, or they question if the stories are entirely literal.
Right.
Others argue the advice is too simple, maybe glosses over risks, or isn't practical for everyone. Critiques about it being maybe misleading in some ways.
It makes sense that advice focused so heavily on entrepreneurship and asset accumulation might clash with more traditional financial planning, which often prioritizes safer routes like job security and paying down debt first.
That's a fair point. There are definitely different schools of thought on the best path.
So it's important for you, listening, to know that these ideas, especially from Rich Dad, Poor Dad, aren't universally accepted without question. And frameworks like Farrugia's, while maybe less controversial, still need critical thinking.
Absolutely. Always take any financial advice from anywhere and really consider it against your own situation, your own risk tolerance, your own goals. There's no one-size-fits-all answer.
For sure.
But that said, even with the critiques, the core ideas that both sources highlight, they offer some really valuable things to think about for anyone on their financial journey.
Okay, so let's try and boil it down. What are the main takeaways we've pulled out from this deep dive?
Well, first, I'd say the absolute need for ongoing financial literacy. You got to keep learning.
Right? Can't be passive about it.
Second, that critical difference between assets, things that make money, and liabilities, things that cost money. Really understanding that.
Yeah, that seems fundamental.
Third, the power of investing strategically to build passive income streams, making your money work for you.
Getting off the time for money treadmill.
Fourth, the huge role of your mindset. Your beliefs about wealth really do matter.
Can't be understated.
And finally, maybe this bigger picture idea. The journey can go from just earning to building wealth through assets and then potentially to contributing that wealth and wisdom back to a wider community.
From service to investment to tribal elder in Farrugia's terms.
Sort of encapsulates it, yeah.
Okay. Well, this has been really fascinating, digging into these different ways of thinking about money and freedom. It leaves us with a question for you, the listener, I think.
Hmm.
Considering everything we've talked about, what does financial freedom really mean for you? Like, beyond just having enough to cover the bills. If you reached a point of surplus, time, money, knowledge, how might you see yourself contributing that back, building your own kind of thriving community?
That's a good one to ponder. What does that tribal elder stage look like in your own context?
Exactly. Definitely something to chew on. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We hope these ideas give you some food for thought on your own path.
Yeah, lots to think about and explore further.